Hello and welcome to this video. On Monday I asked you to have a look at some sentences that I wanted you to rewrite. These were focusing on the nominalisations, which I highlighted, and that I'd like you, if possible, to change them into verb structures if you can. So let's get started. The first sentence I asked you to change was the board made an announcement about the plan to reduce its debt. What's the action? The action is to announce a plan to reduce its debt. So if you get a sentence and you try to ask yourself what's going on in that sentence, one way you might want to do that is by asking yourself the action. And in this case, it's to announce a plan. And this is a very common approach to trying to understand a sentence. You ask yourself what's going on. Once you work out what's going on, then you try to work out who did it and who's being affected. So a reader and a listener will ask themselves that question if they are reading or listening to a difficult sentence. So that's why I'm breaking it down in this way. So the action is to announce a plan to reduce the debt. Who's doing it? It's clear that the board is doing it. The object is the plan to reduce the debt. And therefore, this is an easy rewrite. The board announced its plan or the plan to reduce its debt. So make an announcement is a very, very common nominalisation and very, very easy to rewrite. The second sentence is there will be negotiations on the deal involving the party. So we'll ask ourselves again, what's the action? The action is negotiations or negotiating a deal. So we've got our main verb there. Who's doing it? We don't know. That sentence doesn't tell us who's going to be doing negotiations. Possibly it might be the parties. The parties are mentioned in the sentence, so it might be them. It would be a fair guess, but we can't be 100% sure. Maybe there are some other people or agents involved. Objects, once again, it's clearly the deal, and it might be the parties as well. They might be objects. They're more likely to be subjects, but they could be objects. So once again, we've got this ambiguity here with this sentence. We're asking ourselves lots of questions straight away, as a reader or a listener would. So how can we rewrite this? How can we possibly rewrite this using a strong verb? Well, we might say the parties will negotiate the deal. This would be, I would argue, the most common sense understanding of the original sentence. Now, we don't know the context, we don't have the information before, and we don't have the information afterwards. So without context, this might be the most common sense understanding of what the author actually meant. But the context which surrounds this, as I said, it could be other parties involved, other agents involved, might say that our correction could be wrong. So we've always got to take into account context when we're redrafting or rewriting our original drafts. We've always got to ask ourselves, what is the context and what is the message that I'm trying to communicate? And we can see that here. The meeting will require the involvement of all main players. So the action is involving players in a meeting, but we don't know who's doing it. Are all of the main players doing it? Are there other people? Is there someone else? Are there other agents? So once again, it's that similar problem to the question before, or the sentence before. We don't know exactly who's doing this. An object, well, it's clearly the meeting, but once again, you might ask yourself, why is there a meeting? The context, if we had more context, might tell us why before or after this sentence, in which case fine. But it might be a good idea, possibly, to include a little bit of information about what kind of meeting this is, if there is no other context. So bearing all that in mind, that ambiguity, what could a possible rewrite be? Well, we've got to be careful here because involve is a tricky verb, and the best I could do, the one change that one possible rewrite might be, all the main players will need to be involved or must be involved in the meeting. Now here, I've used a passive infinitive structure. When I'm proofreading, when I'm looking at other person's writing and I'm changing that, I've got a hierarchy in my mind. And that is, in first place is always the active voice, in second place it's gerunds and passives, and in third place it's always nouns. So if I can't use the active voice, I've got to use a gerund or the passive voice. And only if I can't use that, then I would try to use a noun. Now, that's a general rule. That's not my. That's not a rule that I'll keep all of the time. But it's the general rule that I have in my mind. Active, passive gerund, noun. So here I've gone for the passive infinitive. Why? Because if we go for an active, a strong active verb, then we might come up with something like this. All main players will involve themselves in the meeting, which is something slightly strange. And in my opinion, this is a material change to the original sentence. So that's what can happen if you're redrafting and rewriting, is that you can make material changes. Will involve themselves means something entirely different to must be involved, or require the involvement of all main players. So we've got to be careful for material changes when we're doing these transformations. But the problem here is the main verb involve. If we ask ourselves, what are we really trying to say? We might come up with a different main verb, which would be participate. So we could say all main players must participate in the meeting, which is an active voice. It's a different strong verb, but I think it communicates what this message is trying to say. We are open to working together to find solutions to this problem. What's the action? It's solving a problem. Who's doing it? We are doing it. But if we have a look at the sentence, it says we are open to working together. So it's we and possibly other people. Objects is clearly the problem. So what? Yes, objects is the problem. So what is a possible rewrite? Well, there's a couple of options here, so let me take you through them one by one. We are open to working together to solve this problem. This would be the simplest and easiest way to rewrite this, but I'm not too happy with open to working together. It might be what you're trying to say, but maybe we really mean something else. So we want to work together, we need to work together, or we might come up with different options. We invite you to work together to solve this problem, something along those lines. But I just want to highlight that just because we correct the nominalisation doesn't mean that job done, we've done everything that we need to do, because the nominalisation is only one part of the sentence. There are other parts of the sentence. And if we lose focus on the sentence as a whole, we might come up with a monster structure, something like, we want to examine the possibilities of potentially cooperating to solve this problem, which of course is a lot of nonsense. But all this unnecessary language that we have before we've solved or fixed the nominalisation. So just remember not to lose focus on the whole sentence and just focus on the nominalisations. We're not looking for small victories. We're looking for big victories involving the whole sentence, paragraph, or the whole document. Why are you refusing to take part in the questioning regarding the bankruptcy? Questioning here is my gerund. It's my noun. What's the action? It's being questioned about the bankruptcy. Who's doing it? We don't know, but someone clearly wants to question us about the bankruptcy. So there we've got our direct object and indirect object. So what would be a possible rewrite? Well, we can't get away from the passive here, so I've used a passive infinitive. Why are you refusing to be questioned regarding the bankruptcy? If you can think of a good way to put this in the active voice, or if you think of any other ways, then leave your suggestions in the comments below, and I'll have a look at them and get back to you. So I've quickly taken you through the 5 sentences, and I've done this quite quick because I wanted to do it under 10 minutes and I've still got a little bit of time to spare. I wanted to highlight a few little issues that you might have, whether it's choosing the correct strong verb or ignoring the rest of the sentence or not paying attention to the whole sentence, and that it is possible to make material changes if you're not careful. So take those messages away. If you've got any questions at all, or if you want to leave your answers to my questions, but then leave them in the comments below this video and I will get back to you. And I'll see you again on Monday with some more rewrites for you to do.